Hi, and welcome to the Anxiety Relief Revolution podcast. I'm Dan Candell. I am your anxiety relief guy, and you are listening to season 3 of the Anxiety Relief Revolution podcast. Now, this is a very special episode because it's part of my special series of season 3, which is the Anxiety Relief Biz Chat. Now, most of the people who are in my community, they're business professionals, and I opened up to this community and I asked them, hey, what would you like to know? Or what topics would you like me to address on this season of the podcast? And a bunch of people reached out to me and let me know some of the things they would like to hear on the podcast. This is also a special episode because I have a brand new camera that I'm using to film this episode. So if you are listening to this on your favorite podcast app and you'd like to actually see me in action and you would actually like to watch the video version of this, go over to YouTube and type in Dan Candell, and it's going to bring you to my YouTube page. And it's the one that has the most followers, obviously. and you can watch this episode along as I record it. If you're watching this on YouTube and you'd like to listen to the audio version, then head over to your favorite podcast app and type in Anxiety Relief Revolution, and it will bring you to the right place. So you can either watch this or listen to it, or listen and watch, whatever you'd like. Now, this episode, we're going to go deep into work trauma. So a person reached out to me who responded to my post and said, can you give some insight and advice into how you help people work through work traumas or previous work traumas? So I asked this person, I reached out to this person, and I said, hey, can you share a little bit more about your situation so I can address it without addressing it on the podcast? And so this person said yes. And without revealing too much about this person or what the job was, this person worked in a very high pressure job with a lot of responsibilities. And it was actually a very dangerous job because this person worked with people who were not mentally healthy. And this person worked with a lot of people who had a lot of issues. And something happened with one of the people who were in who were in this situation, and this particular person that reached out to me got blamed for everything that happened, and this person was used as the scapegoat, and it was not their fault. And what happened was that trauma of sorts, or I should say that situation, turned into a trauma, and it held that person back from wanting to pursue jobs that would be similar, where this person could excel in those types of work situations and work environments. And this person was living in a little bit of insecurity and also had a little bit of imposter syndrome that bubbled up from this as well. Now, you may have certain work traumas where things may have been pinned on you that weren't your fault. You might also have work traumas where it was just you were fired and the way that it was done was inappropriate. You might have had an injury at work, or you might have had a bad experience with another employee, or maybe one of the people that you employ. Maybe you had to fire someone and it just didn't go well. So there are many situations in the workplace that can actually lead to post-traumatic stress, lead to being overly stressed out, and also can lead to high anxiety and effects from trauma. And what happens when a person experiences trauma and post-traumatic stress and anxiety? That person then avoids, and then that person also can sometimes carry the effects of that trauma into other areas of their life. So, for example, if you had a traumatic experience with a boss or with a manager, then that could actually cause you to avoid going into situations where there's authority, and it could cause anxiety of authority figures. And that anxiety of authority figures can actually cause a person to avoid asking for a raise, going for another job or job offer, And it can also trickle over into professional areas of life too, where it can actually cause anxiety in interpersonal relationships and with other authority figures as well, or that people perceive in positions of power or authority, such as law enforcement, parents, other coaches, teachers, or even advisors. So, this is where it's really important to mitigate any work trauma that you may have had. Now, I'm going to go through some therapeutic processes that can actually help mediate and can help resolve a lot of that work trauma so it no longer affects you anymore. And I'm going to provide some tips, tricks, and techniques that you can start using right now to help your way through that. Now, some people may require deeper processes, and some people may require more assistance. And if that is you, I do have a group program where I help business professionals overcome anxiety, stress, overwhelm, and trauma. The result is what we call presence, confidence, and trust within oneself and one's own abilities to do what's required in order to continue moving forward. So if you do need or want more assistance or a deeper approach, HMU, hit me up. Let me know. You can go over to dancandell.com and there's a place where you can actually join one of my group chats so you can be involved in the conversation of exactly how I can help you out. I also have some other videos on there that you can watch and some other resources and everything like that. So that way you can find your way into my program. So with that said, let's get into some of the healing modalities that can actually help resolve trauma. So number one is definitely acceptance. Now, acceptance doesn't mean you condone what somebody else did. It doesn't mean that you condone what happened to you. It doesn't mean you want it to happen again or you want it to happen to other people. Acceptance is merely agreeing that something happened to you and you can look at it non-judgmentally. Now, you might be wondering, okay, this sounds great, but how do we do that? How do we shed the victim role and move into a world of acceptance where we're looking at that through the lens of somebody who is non-judgmental and not analyzing or criticizing what happened? How do we just accept, okay, that played a role, that played a part in my life, but it doesn't have to define who I am or dictate what I do anymore? Well, there are several ways that we can do this. One of the ways is through an energy healing technique where we actually clear the underlying emotions behind the necessity to carry that on, because people carry on trauma because their body records it. And even though you might not remember every vivid detail, your body has its own memory and it replays feelings. And it also replays these where insecurity and doubt and emotions they'll turn into actual physical feelings. So doing techniques from energy psychology, psychosensory therapy, also somatic healing, these are all ways that you can calm the body and calm the trauma response, both in the body and in the mind. So when you can truly achieve a level of acceptance, you can commit to leaving that trauma behind you and not letting it affect you anymore. Now, there are some other deeper processes that I do with my clients and people in my programs as well. And one of the processes is forgiveness. Forgiveness of others and forgiveness of self. And that's so important. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean you have to go back to the people who may have caused that work trauma and say, you didn't know all of the situation. I forgive you. It doesn't mean you have to write them a letter or an email and then send it off. What we're doing is we're doing forgiveness on a subconscious level. And when you can do forgiveness on a subconscious level, it works even better than actually forgiving the person who wronged you or who hurt you or who traumatized you. Now, forgiveness of others is one step. we also need to do forgiveness of self. Forgiveness of self for knowingly or unknowingly carrying on that which we were carrying on that we might not even have realized was problematic for us. Now, another process that we can do as well is to objectively and rationally look at those traumas as metaphors. And I do this all the time with people where I'll ask them to get a sense or a feeling if that trauma or the feelings connected to the trauma were objects. Study each object and change the object so it can morph into something else. And as it morphs into something else, I instruct people, allow those feelings that were tied to the trauma to morph and change with it. Now, with all this said, these are some of the deep inner healing processes that I do with people, and they're very powerful. They work very fast, and they usually only take maybe like 4 to 6 sessions to complete. And I layer them. So when I do my group work with people, when I have my professional group, I layer these processes so that way people notice an even more drastic effect. Now, one of the other ways to overcome some of the trauma is to be clear of exactly how it was affecting you and how you know it will no longer be affecting you in that way. And I get this a lot. People will say, "Oh, I'll just know. I'll just know that it's not bothering me anymore." But that's not good enough. We have to know exactly how you will know. What won't you be feeling? What will you be feeling more of, less of? What will you be doing more of, less of, better, or different? What will change? So that's why we have to get super clear and specific in how will I know that I have resolved the things that were holding me back or that were triggering me as a result of that trauma. So getting clear. Now you might be wondering, okay, Dan, is there a technique that we can use right now? I'm glad you asked, because yes, there is. This is something that I lead a lot of my clients through, and it is called stealing attributes and resource thinking. So what I have you do is I have you come up with 2 people. One, come up with a celebrity who you feel would be able to work through and process through that trauma. And number 2, come up with either a friend, a colleague, a coworker, an advisor, somebody in your personal or professional life that you know that you have a strong connection to, who you feel would be able to resolve that, or who would think about it or feel it differently. They would solve the problem different than you did, or they would feel different than you did. And just close your eyes for a moment and imagine how each one of them would work through it. Imagine how each one of them would respond, and imagine how each one would feel. And you float into each one of these individuals, and you just see through their eyes, hear through their ears, feel and sense through their mind and body. And you get a sense for what their experience and responses would be in response to that work trauma. And then you float that back out of them and back into yourself. And what this does, it allows you to perceive those memories in a different way. It allows you, it's almost like changing the prescription to your glasses, where when you're looking through one prescription, it's very muddy and it's very traumatic and it's very dirty and it's gross and it's a yucky feeling. But when you put on a clearer prescription, you see things in a much better way. So you can actually change the way you think and change the way you feel about it. And some people, we need to start this with a physical approach, and others we need to start it with a more of a thought approach, because thoughts influence your feelings, sensations, and emotions, and your feelings, sensations, and emotions influence your behaviors, actions, reactions, and responses, which in turn re-influence those thoughts, right? They reinforce them. So we can start at either a body level. So if you feel the effects of that trauma physically and they manifest physically, we start on more of a physical level doing psychosomatic work, and we do work from psychosensory therapy, which unlinks the physical response from the mental response. And then what we do is we move into a different intervention where we work more on the subconscious level. And working in those ways can resolve that work trauma very quickly, and it can help you move forward in ways that you might not have even imagined that you could move forward from that. So with that said, I'd like to thank the person who sent in that question and who wanted more insight with that, because work trauma is something that I have found so many people experience. And as a result of the work trauma, again, people start to avoid things. Some people start to get panic attacks. Some people even have to quit their jobs because of the mental and physical effects that they have from different work-related traumas. So just know that there is guidance out there. There is work that you can do in order to overcome those traumas. You just have to put in the work, and you have to be willing to do it. And it doesn't mean you have to go through years of therapy. It doesn't mean you have to be on mind-altering medications. It just means you have to be willing to work through it. And unfortunately, I find some people aren't. Some people aren't willing to put the work in because, especially with trauma, they are not the ones that caused the trauma. So there's a level of resentment. And it's like, why should I have to put in all this work, time, effort, and energy and money to resolve the stuff that I didn't even cause, that I didn't even do? The reason why is because you should respect yourself enough in order to want to resolve it. Because the more you stay stuck inside that anxiety, that stress, that trauma, the more you stay stuck inside of it, the more those other people win. The more the people who cause the trauma, the more they win. And you don't want them to win. You want to be victorious. So with that said, my friends, it has been great sharing this with you. And I look forward to sharing more with you in Season 3 of the Anxiety Relief Revolution podcast in the special edition of Anxiety Relief Biz Chat. So with that said, if you need more guidance or more work or help, feel free to go over to my website, dancandell.com. Also, make sure you rate and subscribe to the podcast, my YouTube channel, and also follow me on TikTok at Anxiety Relief Guy and over on Instagram at Dan Candell. Thank you so much, my friends. I also have a free community over on Facebook where you can join and you get very special access to exclusive content that I post over there. And also I do mindset jam sessions in that community. It's called Anxiety Relief for Professionals. So with that said, be well, do good, be true to who you are, and happy healing. Thank you for joining me and being a part of the Anxiety Relief Revolution. If you haven't already, make sure you rate, subscribe, and give a 5-star review. It really helps me help you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on another episode.